Hello, I am Davina, and hello to all of you bold, beautiful, brilliant, and evolving souls. Today, I am going to talk about the difference between complaining, verbal ventilating, and processing emotions. And I think there's some little bit of crossover. So first, with complaining. Complaining is, first of all, it's a normal human thing, and I think we don't want to shame ourselves if we're complaining. A lot of us grew up with toxic positivity where we weren't allowed to whine or complain or talk about our problems or be negative at all. And so it's okay if you're complaining, it's okay. I think this is the beginning of how we process our feelings. It's how we start. And complaining often happens, it's just a mental process. So it's mental suffering. It's when we are using our head and our reasoning and our to try and make sense of things and work things out. And we often, yeah, feel a very sense of frustration, sadness, helplessness, lack of control. We may be talking about our problems, but not seeing a solution. Um, Complaining is a place of a lot of suffering. And at this point, it's really from the neck up. We're not yet feeling anything. We're just processing it in our heads, in our minds. And complaining can also involve blame. And again, blaming can be appropriate. There is healthy blaming. We don't want to get stuck in blaming, but we want to be able to blame, especially be able to put the blame on our parents for as long as necessary. Eventually, I do believe it's a blameless world. Like everyone is just acting out of their own pain, and no one is really trying to harm anyone. I don't believe there's any really bad people, just a lot of hurting people. But it's okay to also be in a stage of blaming. Also important to know that as a scapegoat, we often take on blame that isn't ours, take on responsibility that isn't ours. So if you find out complaining can also involve part of it could be self-blame as well. So just to bring awareness to what's happening when you're complaining, and also to start linking. What we can do is when we're complaining, what are these words that I'm saying? What's the content? What are the emotions behind it? If we can just say stop for a minute, sometimes if I get carried away in my head, I'll just say stop and just like freeze, like when you're a child, just freeze your body, freeze your thoughts, and just stop. And then try to like, what are the emotions here? What, like if I'm going, "Arr, arr, 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 arr," then it's probably anger and grief. If I'm going, what if this, what if this, what if that, what if, then it's probably fear. If I'm going, how am I gonna on and how am I gonna do this and how, and it's probably hopelessness. So these are all the different kind of varieties of what do our thoughts sound like and what are we saying, and start connecting to that, to a feeling. Oh, I'm feeling infuriated. Oh, I'm feeling sad. Oh, I'm feeling really scared. And that's when we can move into kind of the next level, which is the verbal ventilation. And then we can move from one to the other too. We can be complaining and then go into verbal ventilation and back into complaining, it can switch. When we're verbally ventilating, we're then connecting the heart to the head. So we're talking about our feelings, but now our heart is more in it. And we're actually we might talk about our feelings and our problems, but then we're also feeling the pain and the grief. So we're starting to get into, the actual processing of the emotions. So verbal ventilating is also a healthy, normal thing to do. I do it a lot because I live alone, and so I definitely highly recommend talking out loud. This has been a huge change for me. something I started doing probably about five, maybe longer, 5, 6 years ago. I just allowed myself to talk out loud. And just whatever's on my mind, I just like my mind, my heart, I just talk and cry and then talk and then cry. And as I said, sometimes I go back into the complaining part, and this is okay. I think, again, I don't want to shame complaining because it's normal. It's human to be suffering. But just to be mindful that, okay, maybe I don't want to continue complaining. Maybe this isn't productive because I'm not actually, the thing about complaining is we don't resolve anything, but then we just come back again and we find ourselves telling the same story and the same problem, and we're not digging deeper, we're not resolving the pain. So that's why we want to try to go deeper if we can. And if we can't do it by ourselves, then we do it with a trusted friend or a therapist or a coach. And this one, we start getting a little bit more of an embodied feeling in the verbal ventilation. And I think you can do this journaling as well. I think it's probably almost as effective. I do feel like verbally is really powerful, to really something about using your voice out loud to express your pain. It's yeah, so so those are the difference between the complaining and the verbal ventilation. And then the processing. The processing is, I mean, processing you can actually do without even talking. It's just when you're just sitting in the pain. And if you just sit for a while, um, if we can have the patience and to say, I can be with this. I've always said those are such powerful words, just to stop and just, I can be with this. Because right now I can tell I'm feeling fear and I can feel it in my back. And so I'm like, and if I can just stop myself, and if I just sit with that feeling, if I can notice the sensations in my body, that's when we start to really dig deeper, and just sitting in silence and noticing where are those sensations and focusing on them and bringing attention to the body, bringing attention, to if is it in our chest that we can really feel, sadness, maybe it's a heaviness in the chest, or maybe it's a tightness in your belly, or sometimes when I'm in hypoarousal, I get feeling like a real bloated, heavy feeling in my stomach, or where are we feeling the feelings? So that's when you come to the real, just pure processing of emotions, where we're just sitting in silence, in awareness, bringing that compassionate awareness and curiosity to what is happening in our body. What is this feeling? And sometimes if you're just with it, and you just sit with it, like, I don't know how long it takes. Sometimes if I get into like a, sit for an hour in a meditation and that's why body scanning is so important, I think, in my humble opinion, or has been for me. When we get into the body scanning, then we start to see, oh, this is what I'm feeling in my body. And then if you do that for a while, you might just feel those feelings naturally coming up because you've been attending, like, to those feelings. There's a saying that Tara Brach uses, like, attend and befriend. So we want to pay attention to the pain instead of running away from it. Like, complaining is still an escape. It's an escape from actually the feeling of the pain. So it might bring us sort of a temporary relief to like complain, but it doesn't actually heal us. The healing comes in the verbal ventilation and the processing of feelings. So I hope that makes sense. And always, wherever you are, it's important to just say, those words of unconditional love, like, I love you, even when you're complaining. It's okay, because if we shame ourselves more, it's not going to be helpful. And if you are shaming yourself, then just bring love around that, bring love around everything, and compassion. So I hope this was helpful and clear. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. As always, I'm wishing you many, many blessings on your journey of healing and awakening. And I am Davina at Fullness Blooming.